Okay, so if you've ever struggled with understanding how to use the CAGED system, not just understanding what it is, but how to actually use it, especially when it comes to playing lead, you're going to love this lesson. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a 1-4-5 chord progression, and we're going to break it down across 5 different positions of the fretboard. So we're going to look at basically every possible combination that I can think of how to use the CAGED system. Now, we're going to start with chords just so you can visualize the chords, but on top of that, we're going to layer arpeggios, scales, the flat 7 note, so that you can start basically using those chords to highlight the chord tones. That'll tell you which notes are safe to land on when you're improvising. It's a big thing. And what I love about this isn't theory. This isn't getting in under the hood. This is just a visual thing. That's why I love CAGED so much. I'm not a theory guy, even though ironically I teach guitar instruction. That's not how my brain works, especially when it comes to improvising. What you need is a Swiss Army knife of tools that you can access quickly. You've got a sound in your head, something that you want to go for. And once you can sort of visualize and you sort of know where those safe notes are, that's what the CAGED system is to me. It allows me to do that. And it organizes the fretboard in a very meaningful way, in a very simple way. 5 shapes, that's it. You can put everything you can think about, every scale, every note, every arpeggio, you can fit them into these 5 shapes. So what we're going to do then, and I've got a little song that goes with this, which I'll get to in a minute. But before I get into the song, I just want to set it up real quick. So we're going to start with the chords we're going to be using are G, C, and D. That's going to be our 1, 4, and 5. G is our 1, C is our 4 chord, D is our 5 chord. And we're going to start right here. I want to get right into these positions first. So this is a G chord using the E shape. Now the next chord in this 1-4-5 is a C chord. So the question you need to ask yourself when you're playing in these little containers like this, to really understand how everything fits together in this one spot of the fretboard, is where is your nearest C chord? I realize you have C chords all over the fretboard, but where's the nearest one to where you're playing? And the answer to that would be right here. That's my C chord using the A shape. And you can see they're both right here, sort of between the 5th fret and the 3rd fret. So G, C, now where's my nearest D chord? Well, it's right here. That's a D chord using the C shape. So just to clarify what we've talked about so far, G chord using the E shape, C chord using the A shape, and a D chord using the C shape. Now don't get too confused in the labels of the shapes. I'm just calling out what they are just so you can have a point of reference. So that's the first thing that we're going to do, is just see that. Now it doesn't mean you have to play these chords. I know some of you struggle with bar chords and you can't make them. You're not going to be playing bar chords. We're going to be playing a lead. But those notes in these chords, now watch this. If I break this down and play that G chord as an arpeggio, those notes were the same notes in the chord, right? It's the 1, 3, and the 5 of the major scale. But those notes are safe notes to land on when the song has the G chord that's passing by in the song. So you have to kind of almost think like a rhythm player when you're playing chord changes, which we're going to be doing. I probably should have mentioned that. We're going to be playing over the chord changes. So when the G happens in the song, in the jam track, we're going to be playing G stuff. So that's the G arpeggio. When the C chord happens, you can do the same thing. You can play a C arpeggio. Right? When the D chord happens, you can play a D arpeggio. And so those give me just some visual anchors, some safe notes to go to, safe notes to land on, safe notes to start with. They sort of give me like a nice little framework, and that's all happening in this one little container. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing in terms of arpeggio. Now you can also connect the major pentatonic scale. I'm not even going to use the major scale for this. I'm going to use the arpeggios and then the major pentatonic scale, just because it's 5 notes. So we've already looked at 3 notes for each, right? So for your G note, you've got those 3 notes, G, B, and D. We can add 2 more notes to that arpeggio to give us the major pentatonic scale. So now we've got, that's one of the notes. That's one of the notes. So now we've got this. So that would be my G major pentatonic scale pattern 2, if you're thinking in terms of patterns. And this would be the E shape. Now I'll put a lesson up on the screen right now for those of you that are interested in knowing more about the E shape that shows you specifically. I've got a PDF file that goes with it that shows you how to play the major pentatonic scale inside the E shape. It shows you how to play lots of things, the arpeggio, all this stuff that I'm talking about is in that lesson. So that's a point of reference. You can check that out if you need to. But that's how this is going to work, is for each of these chords, you've got the arpeggio and you've got the major pentatonic scale. So for C, that would be my C major pentatonic scale pattern 5. It fits into the A shape. And that would be covered in this lesson that I'll put up on the screen for the A shape. If you want to go back and check that out, go into all the detail for that. And then same thing can be done for the D chord using the C shape. All right, so hopefully you're tracking with me so far. So we've looked at the G, C, and D chord with our starting G chord using the E shape, right? Now we're gonna play those same 3 chords, G, C, and D, but we're gonna go to the next starting chord shape. It's still gonna be a G chord, but we're gonna go up here. We're gonna keep moving this direction. So now we're gonna go to a G chord using the D shape. So that's right here. That's our G chord using the D shape. We're gonna play then our C chord using the G shape. Now the G shape is the hardest of those shapes from the CAGED system. There's different ways you can do it. I think of the bottom half of the chord like this, just easy, one little bar there, and then I don't even play the 6th string. This is just how I do it. So I actually leave the root note out. And then there's the top half, like this. That makes it easier for me. You can do it however you want. So I see some people doing that craziness. I just can't do it. So G chord, so that's a C chord using the G shape, right? So starting with our G chord using the D shape, then we go to C, and then the next chord is our D chord, which we'll use, or we'll play using the A shape. So we've already done the A shape, remember? We did the C before, now we're playing our D using that same shape. So let's just recap real quick. If this is weird, if you're like not sure why we're talking about all this, just stick with me, trust in the process here. I'm leading to something. So G, C, D, 1, 4, 5. Now we're gonna come up here. G, C, D, 1, 4, 5. We're playing the same 3 chords, but in 2 different positions. I can keep going up the fretboard. G, C, D. And here's the cool thing is, just from these first 2 positions that I showed you, we've already covered all of the chord shapes. We've gone through all of the shapes of the CAGED system just with these first 2. So now, as we keep going up the fretboard, we're just gonna be repurposing those same shapes. So it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel and keep learning all kinds of new stuff. That's it. Those are the 5 shapes of the CAGED system. Okay, so now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play the jam track with me improvising a lead over it, and I'm gonna go through all 5 positions. I know we've only talked about 2 of them, and in this video we're really only gonna have time to get through how to play off of these 2. But this is gonna really unravel the whole thing for you once you understand this concept. So when I play this jam track, I'm gonna put the starting chord shape up on the screen just so you can understand. Remember, it's the same 3 chords, G, C, and D, but it's going to start with the E shape, and then we're going to move into this next container, and the starting chord will be the D shape, and then we're going to move up to the next container, which will be the C shape, and then we'll move to the next one, which will be the A shape, and then lastly we'll come up to the G shape. And you can see that I'm just playing a G chord for each of those. I'm just changing that the shape for that starting chord. So that means the other 2 chords will change too. But once you can get this concept, you've basically done everything you can do in terms of unlocking the fretboard. That is the mystery of the fretboard, is all really in this. Now I realize there's diminished chords and minor chords and everything, but the principles in this are principles that carry throughout all of that. So let's listen to this song, and then we'll talk about how to play the first 2 shapes, everything that I'm playing note for note. Okay, so the jam track starts with a G chord, and then it goes to a C chord. That's the first two chords we're going to look at. So I started with this. Now that happened over the G chord part. So I started by playing this G triad here. Now this is a triad inside of my G chord using the E shape, right? 3rd fret, 2nd string, 4th fret, 3rd string, 5th fret, 4th string. And I started with that 5th fret, 4th string, it comes in right on the 1. I slid into that. So I played that. Right? And I just walked right down the chord. So that's all I'm doing. I'm playing the arpeggio, but I'm also just strumming, picking the notes out of the chord, which is what the arpeggio is. Now from here, I walked it down. So this is on that 4th string. We go 5, 4, 3. Now when I came to this note is a note that is what happens throughout this entire lead. This is the flat 7. That's what gives it the bluesy sound. Anytime I want to blues it up a little bit, I go to the flat 7. I also use that as like a tension chord, because when you play a G7, it means you're going to resolve that tension by playing the next chord, which will be the C. So if we have, and I came down to that note. Now I walk down chromatically. Remember with chromatic, anytime I say chromatic, it's just filling in the notes in between. So instead of me going, I can go. That's all chromatic playing is. You can do it with as many notes as you want. And that's a real jazzy, kind of a classy sound to play those chromatic notes. And then after that, I came up here and hit this 5th fret 2nd string. Now, I was thinking about that G major pentatonic scale, which we already talked about, right? G chord using the E shape. There's your G major pentatonic scale. So this note is in that G major pentatonic scale. That's kind of what I was thinking about. And then the song goes to the C chord, and I played this to really highlight the notes of that C chord. So by playing this 3rd fret 4th string, and I slide down to this note, that's the 3rd interval of my C chord. How do I know that? Because I know the arpeggio. Here's my C chord, here's the C arpeggio. There's that note. 1, 3, 5, right? We can keep going up. 1, 3, 5. That's my C major arpeggio. So I came down into this, and then I came up here and went, actually I went, and those are just the notes out of the top part of that A shape. Remember, our C chord is in this neighborhood. There it is using the A shape, and then the top part of that A shape, that triad, looks like that. So that's where that comes from. Then the song goes to the 5 chord, which is a D. And typically when you play a 5 chord, you play the 7. That's just a typical sound. You play like a D7 sound. Now, the position I was in was like this, like the D chord using the C shape. I wanted to really highlight that because that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I could play it like this, like using that C7 shape. But instead I went, so it's 3rd fret 1st string, and then we slide into the 2nd fret, and then watch this. 3rd fret 2nd string, and here's what I'm picturing, right? My D chord. But then I came to this note, 5th fret 3rd string, to hit the flat 7 out of my D chord. Now I know that because I know how to play my flat 7 or my dominant 7 arpeggio. And if you're new to arpeggios, the two that I would start with would be your major arpeggio and your dominant 7 arpeggio. Because they're one and the same basically. The dominant 7 arpeggio is the same as your major arpeggio. It's just got that extra note. So your major arpeggio for D out of the C shape would be 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, and then you've got your flat 7. That's that note I just hit. And then we can keep going. 1, 3, 5. So when I went, and hit that note. That's the flat 7 out of the D7 arpeggio. So we have, and then I played, just walked down the arpeggio from that flat 7. And that walks us back to the G chord. And that's just a chromatic walk up. That's the note I was trying to hit, which is my G note, 5th fret 4th string. I just walked it up chromatically. 2, 3, 4. You can see how much, there's a lot of chromatic notes in this. A lot of flat 7s and a lot of chromatic. So after this 5th fret 4th string, and by the way, we're at the G chord in the song. So I played that, then I came up to the 3rd interval of the G chord, and then up to the 6th interval, and then walked it down chromatically, down to the 5th interval. So, and all of that little lick, is just an idea that lives inside this E shape. That's how I think of it. All these little ideas are noodling ideas that I've done for years, and you probably know a lot of these yourself. That's how you learn this stuff, is you just take a shape like that and you just spend some time with it. You can start finding those chord tones. That's the note, right? Those are your safe notes to land on for your G chord. All right, so everything we've done so far has been out of this position. 1, 4, 5. Let's move up to the next position now. We're gonna still play the same 3 chords, but now we're gonna use different voicings. This is gonna really start to hit home the relationship of your 1, 4, 5 in this position. Right, so I can very quickly access my 1, 4, 5 from a new vantage point. And once you're able to start doing this very easily, you can start then flowing across the fretboard. You don't have to stay within your containers. You can start jumping from container to container. That's when it starts getting really powerful. Hopefully a light bulb went off just by hearing that and thinking of that through, like the power of that. Okay, so G chord using the D shape. I started with, that's the first 3 notes. Very simple, right? It's just 8th fret, 7th fret, 6th fret on the 2nd string. Now what is that? Well, inside this D chord shape, now remember it's a G chord in the D shape now. Now I know that some people play their D shape like this. They get all, the top part of that little D triad. I can't do that. So I just play strings 5, 4, 3, and 2. I actually leave out the 3rd interval. That's just how I've always done it. It's in the same position though. So there's my root, there's my 7th interval, here's my flat 7. That's all I did, is I walked down to the flat 7. You need to know where your flat 7s are within each of your shapes. Hear that point and think about what I'm saying. So then the question is, where are all my flat 7s inside of this shape? Forget the label, it's just this shape, this thing that I'm looking at here. Where are my flat 7s? Well, I've got one here, and I know about that one. I've got another one down here. So you have to kind of memorize where your flat 7s are for each of these shapes. There's only 5 shapes. We're going to repurpose them, right? So even though it seems like this is all this new information coming at you, you're going to see that after this, we're going to start reusing these same chord shapes just in different spots in the fretboard. So when you learn a flat 7 in this shape, for example, anytime you're using this shape, and you're going to use it to play a C chord and a D chord in a minute, you'll know where the flat 7 is for that C chord and the flat 7 is for that D chord. You see what I'm saying? Hopefully that's a light bulb. This is a flat 7 for a G chord only because I'm in this position. If I were to play it up here, same thing. I know where that flat 7 is. That's the flat 7 for a C. So you can see that the label starts to not matter so much. It's just like, where is that flat 7? Where's that sound that I'm looking for inside of this shape here that I'm in? Now after that, the song goes to this to the C chord. And I mentioned we're going to stay in this neighborhood, so my C chord is going to be using the G shape. Top part of the shape, bottom part of the shape. We're going to stay in kind of like the top part of the shape. And what I played there for that C chord goes like this. Now what is all of that? Remember, it's a C chord using the G shape, right? So here's a big light bulb. Your major pentatonic scale, pattern 1, is right there. There's your G shape. Oh, you're seeing it now, right? Maybe you knew that. I'll put a lesson up on the screen for a deep dive in the G shape that goes through all the stuff, your arpeggios and everything, your pentatonic scales, major and minor, how to connect them to that G shape. But that's pattern 1. That's why I like this one so much. So that lick that I played was just a major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. Just walking kind of right down that scale. I'll just put the tab up. I'm not going to call out each note, but you can see where that lick is coming from. Now the song goes to the D chord. We're going to stay in the same container to make it nice and concise. So I'm going to play it here. D chord using the A shape. And remember, we talked about the arpeggio that's connected to this. And then you've got your major pentatonic scale, which is connected to this, which goes... And I'm just going to walk up the D major pentatonic scale, starting on this 4th fret, 4th string, which is the 3rd interval of my D chord. And this is the D major pentatonic scale. So we're switching scales and everything to match the chords as they pass by. So we're just going to walk it up like this. And this is going to go between this fret, and then I'm going to bounce everything off the 7th fret here. So it's like, now we're going to come to the 5th fret. That's the flat 7, by the way. So it's like this. Now we're going to go back down and then go back up. So it's like... And then the song switches back to the G chord, and check this out, I played. Now what is that? Remember, we're staying in the same neighborhood, so it's off of our D shape here. It's our G chord using the D shape, and I'm just connecting the major pentatonic scale, the G major pentatonic scale, to that D shape. That would be pattern 3 of my major pentatonic scale that I'm connecting to this shape. Isn't that cool? It's just the G major pentatonic scale. But I wasn't thinking that so much. I was just seeing that chord shape, and I know what my options are. This is the big thing. Once you can visualize what your options are off of these chord shapes. So when I see this, I know I've got a flat 7 there. I've got my major pentatonic here. I've got all kinds of things that are very easily accessible. I've got these chromatic notes. Right? You can really start making, and that's just using 2 strings there, but you can start seeing how it all kind of pieces together. So what we've done is we've played a 1-4-5 out of these 2 shapes, and we've highlighted the chords. We've been playing the chord changes, and everything that I'm going to cover, actually I'm going to wrap up this part 1 video there because we've covered a lot, but in the part 2 video we're going to go through the other 3 positions of the fretboard, but we're going to use the same chord shapes we've already covered. We've already covered all 5 chord shapes from the CAGED system. So we're just going to go through repurposing those and pulling different licks out of them, like you heard in that little song that I put together. So that's, if you want to get that and get the tablature for the song, also get the jam track so that you can practice playing all of this stuff. You can get all of those extras, remember, by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP582. That's the lesson number for this lesson. And if you've got a question or a comment on any of this, please leave a comment. I always appreciate reading them. I read all the comments, all the questions, and trying to answer all of them. And it's always helpful when you leave a comment because that'll resonate with other people. Sometimes people are having the same struggles that you are, or maybe the same kinds of light bulb breakthrough moments. It's always good to share that stuff. And I think it just sort of helps encourage everybody. It helps encourage me for sure. All right, we'll see you in part 2 where we'll go over the rest of this.